Am I the asshole for expecting my husband to make an exception for me when I didn't make an exception for him? I am 40F. My husband is 37 meters. Names have been changed. This is long, buckle up. My husband and I have been very happily married for 10 years. Minor bumps along the way, but nothing we couldn't communicate about and work through. Until now, my best friend Cindy and her husband, Mike, are going through a nasty divorce, and it has caused a serious rift between my husband and I didn't realize how serious it was until this morning when he told me he was going to stay at his brother's house for the weekend. To understand the current situation, there is a bit of background I need to provide. 4 years ago, my hubby's close friend, Alan, was caught having an affair on his wife. We'll call her Carol. I was good friends with Carol, not super close, but we'd get together for cocktails a few times a month, and occasionally we'd go on double dates. My husband told me that Alan had been unhappy for a while because Carol had stopped having sex with him. When I talked to Carol, she didn't deny this. She said that Alan had gained weight and she was no longer attracted to him. This is somewhat true. He was around 6 feet tall and went from about 200 pounds to 250 pounds. Over the course of a year, those are estimates. Alan was a chef and started sleeping with a female co-worker 15 years younger than him. He was 35. She was 20. The affair lasted for some time before they were caught at work. It all came out. He was fired and Carol left him. Cheating hits very close to home for me. My father had an affair on my mother when I was young, and it ripped the family apart. Carol and Alan had 2 young children, and the divorce hit them hard. I was there for her and the kids through it all. The divorce was ugly and costly. Suffice to say, it would take Alan years to financially recover. Throughout the whole ordeal, my husband still talked to Alan and would occasionally loan him money. The money isn't the issue, as my husband and I both work and have our own accounts. The issue was that Alan had just cheated on his wife and ruined their family. I didn't want my husband remaining friends with him. Alan started drinking and going down a dark path. He was trying to drag my husband down with him. I told my husband if he continues his friendship with Alan, then we would have problems. After some back and forth, and me basically putting my foot down, he agreed to basically cut Alan out. We didn't need influences or people like that in our life. I should mention my husband says he didn't know about the affair, which I still question, but without proof he knew. I let it go. Alan was extremely upset when my husband told him they'd no longer be friends. They had grown up together, but I didn't want men like that in our life. Shortly after all this, we were reflecting on everything my husband said, something that I never forgot. He said, "One day one of your friends will do something they regret and need you. I hope you have the same wherewithal to cut them out if I ask you to." Cut to the present, and you guessed it. My bestie, Cindy, cheated on her husband, Mike. Mike worked in manufacturing and was laid off in the midst of COVID. He eventually went back to work, but at a much lower wage according to her, and money was tight for them. Cindy picked up a job working as a barista. As she tells it, one of her regulars was a younger guy in real estate who has an eye for her and was constantly asking her to get together. He would slip her $100 tips a few times a week, she says. He knew she was married. Eventually, Cindy gave in and started seeing this guy regularly on her days off while Mike was working. She told me she always felt guilty and knew it was wrong but couldn't stop herself. She said the sex was like she'd never experienced with Mike, and she felt wanted and desired again. They were caught when their oldest daughter came home early from school because she wasn't feeling well. Cindy was busy with her AP, didn't see the text from her daughter, and the daughter walked in on them. The daughter told Mike. Mike was devastated and they are getting a divorce. The family has basically ostracized Cindy and want nothing to do with her currently. I and a few friends have been her support through everything. I need to say that I recognize what she did is terrible. However, my husband has pounced on this opportunity and is demanding I cut contact with her completely, just like I did with him 4 years ago. He says we don't need cheating cradle robbers in our lives. I explained that this is different and the issues between Mike and Cindy are more complicated, and she feels genuine remorse and wants her family back. Also, what his friend did years ago was creepy. He says he doesn't care about the issues or how she feels, and that he made a sacrifice for me years ago by cutting out one of his closest friends, and I need to do the same for him. I told him I wasn't going to do that, and that he was being petty and vengeful, and he knows The situations are completely different. This morning he said he's heading to his brother's for the weekend. He said he feels betrayed. I honestly don't see how he feels this way. I don't know what to do. I asked him not to go. I told him I loved him and we can talk this out. He responded with, "I'll see you Monday." I am at a loss. Update 1. I believe the situations were different because my friend is genuinely remorseful. She wants to reconcile. Alan did not. He acted as if he didn't care and showed little to remorse. He regretted what he did, but not because he betrayed his wife, but because of its effect on his children and his relationship with them. This really didn't sit well with me. Alan started partying with a younger crowd from his work, doing drugs not weed, drinking heavy and just overall regressing as an adult, and I didn't want him dragging my husband into it. 2. It's really hard to accept that someone you consider your best friend could do something so vile. I tried to tune out the detail about her daughter catching them, because it's so sad and heartbreaking. I've always thought she was such a good mother and model wife. I looked up to her even. What does that weigh about my judgment of character? 3. Now that I've accepted what I have to do, and I feel consumed with guilt, the thought of cutting Cindy out of my life hurts. We've been through a lot. Our families have vacationed together. I've confided in her and vice versa. It's scary to imagine just telling her sorry, but we're done. And knowing that's exactly what I made my husband do and realizing how he must have felt, it feels real shitty. He doesn't show a ton of emotion. He's very much a man's man. Had he told me he was feeling this way, I wouldn't have made him do it. I regret it a lot. 4. The responses are overwhelming. It's only been hours and strangers are telling me I am a horrible person and my husband should divorce me. I feel sick. I texted him a novel minutes ago telling him how sorry I was, that I feel guilty, I feel stupid, that I am sorry about what I made him do years ago and now I know how he felt. I told him I will cut Cindy out if that's what he really wants. I told him to reconnect with Alan. I asked him to come home and talk to me before heading to his brother's. I'm waiting for him to respond. He's too good to me. He'll probably forgive me, tell me I don't have to cut Cindy out, and I will feel even worse. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just feel like absolute shit right now. Thanks for the slap of reality. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories.